In this week's EV news, someone's done a terrible thing and pranked the head of FairFuelUK, Howard Cox. A Scottish council is under fire for having £1 million worth of EVs sat in a car park not turning a wheel. And could Octopus Energy be looking to acquire Bulb? Hello and welcome to another EV news. Huge apologies from me for missing last week's. It's been a little bit hectic recently. We're back on track now though, so here we go. Be sure to like this video, and if you're new here, hit that subscribe button as well, so you'll be the first to hear about new videos. I've got a lot of good stuff coming up, so definitely keep an eye out. First up this week, someone's pranked poor old Howard Cox, the head of FairFuelUK. You know, that lobbying group that's always trying its hardest to pressure government to keep fuel prices low and delay the incoming ban on new petrol and diesel cars and all that kind of stuff. You might have heard about some logistical issues with fuel supply in the UK the past few days. It's not a fuel shortage, of course, but it's rapidly becoming one because idiots are panic buying petrol. Somebody's taken his home address and phone number and put it on Google Maps as a petrol station, and I think the result is almost inevitable. Let's take a look at the article. As the long-standing boss of the FairFuelUK organisation, which campaigns against tax rises on petrol, Howard Cox is used to criticism from environmentalists and cyclists. What he didn't expect was someone listing his home address in Kent as a petrol station on Google Maps in the middle of a fuel crisis. I got 70 phone calls with people saying, "Have you got any petrol for sale?" he told The Guardian. I was panicking because my phone didn't stop ringing and it's my private home address. They typed in petrol stations near me and it came up with a little flag over my house saying petrol station. He said the reaction on Twitter had given him clues as to who was responsible. It has to be an environmentalist. The people who are laughing their socks off are mainly cyclists. I've blocked a few of them. If I find him, I'm assuming it's a him. I'm not quite sure if I can control my actions. I'm convinced it's a militant cyclist. Cox is currently campaigning against the government's proposal to ban the sale of new petrol cars from 2030. He claims to have saved motorists £100 billion over the last decade in planned tax rises and hikes in fuel duty after helping to mobilise an extensive database of supporters to lobby the government. His opponents instead believe his group, which is funded by the Road Haulage Association and trade organisation Logistics UK, has cost the state money they could have been spending on public services and stop people from choosing more environmentally friendly forms of transport. Believe it or not, I am pro cleaning the air and pro cycling, but the militant cyclists have attacked me remorselessly over the last couple of years, said Cox. I cycle, I'm not a horrible person, I do want to help the environment, I just don't want drivers to pick up the tab. The freedom to drive is an important thing. I'm in a rural community and public transport is very, very bad. You need your vehicle. He said it took him 2 hours to get his address taken off Google Maps, and the incident made him reconsider whether he should be running the campaign group from his domestic address. It has brought it home to me that I might need a PO box, he said. Now obviously, he sounds like a lovely man and a totally upstanding member of society, and it's a terrible thing to have happened to him. It is not hilarious in the slightest. Definitely not. Stop laughing. But on a serious note though, I am asking my fellow EV drivers to rein in the smug just a little bit. Facebook, Twitter, etc. have been absolutely jam-packed with smug posts about queues at petrol stations over the weekend. But remember, not everybody's fortunate enough to be able to afford an EV, and a lot of people depend on their car to get them to and from work. Work that in a lot of cases is providing essential services to all of us. You can drone on about how you could buy a £4,000 Nissan Leaf with a knackered battery and only need to stop to charge it every 40 miles, but the fact of the matter is it's still very difficult to enter the EV market with a very low budget, unless you're very, very committed and you're willing to put up with the huge amounts of inconvenience and the lifestyle change that goes with it. So just wind your necks in a little bit, will you? I think Howard Cox is fair game though, have at it. Next up, some more government incompetence, but local government this time. South Lanarkshire Council have been found to have a ton of Renault Zoes just sitting gathering dust in a car park. Some excellent use of public funds there. Let's take a look. A £1 million fleet of brand new electric cars has been abandoned in car parks by a council who claimed the vehicles would help fight climate change. South Lanarkshire Council has blamed the pandemic for leaving most of the 141 state-of-the-art cars bought using public money unused. Last September, the local authority, one of the biggest in Scotland, took delivery of the flagship fleet of Renault Zoes on a 3-year lease. But a year on, they've hardly turned a wheel. We found rows and rows of unmoved EVs stored in 3 council car parks in Hamilton, with the vehicles neatly arranged in alphabetical registration order as they would come off of a car transporter. A third of them had been left lined up on the top floor of a car park at Duke Street, exposed to the elements. Each green and white Zoe has "I am electric to help make South Lanarkshire sustainable" livery on it, and many of them still have protective coverings on the interiors. A whistleblower said that they promised this new fleet would cut down on the council's emissions, and they were right, because they haven't actually been using them. They've just been dumped in car parks, and most of them are not being used at all. More than 40 of them are in the top floor of Duke Street car park and have clearly never turned a wheel. It looks like some sort of open-air electric car showroom up there. The council doesn't quite know what to do with them, and you will rarely see a council worker using them. What a total waste of money in going green but failing miserably, only a few weeks before Scotland hosts the world's biggest climate change conference in COP26. Electric cars are the future, and councils need to adapt their fleet, but South Lanarkshire did this deal at the height of the pandemic, which appears to have been utter madness. The council was able to splash the cash after being given a £1 million grant from Scottish Government Quango Transport Scotland. The cars, which depending on speed can do about 200 miles without recharging, can cost more than £32,000 to buy from a showroom. French car giant Renault said it was their biggest EV order in Scotland when the delivery was made last September. The Scottish Government's then Cabinet Secretary for Transport, Infrastructure and Connectivity, Michael Matheson, said it was the largest order of its kind in Scotland, and it would improve air quality, reduce emissions and help respond to the climate emergency. Okay, what to make of this one? So, there's obviously a slight whiff of anti-EV rhetoric in this whole article. I mean, it's printed in the Daily Record after all, so say no more about that, right? But there's a slight inaccuracy there about the RRP of a Zoe, but we won't worry about that too much. This is a pretty terrible use of public funds. If these cars have actually just been bought or leased and are just dumped, not being used, I mean, if the plans have changed and they're not needed, then surely either find alternative uses for them within the council or negotiate with Renault for early returns of some of them. I mean, there is, of course, a huge shortage of new cars at the moment, so I'm sure Renault would be chomping at the bit, actually, to come up with some favourable terms to then sell these cars as approved used and satisfy some of the demand in the market. Because people are absolutely crying out for new EVs and they can't get a hold of them. I'm not sure, but it definitely sounds like it could be managed a little bit better to me. Let me know what you think in the comments. And finally, Octopus Energy are in the news recently, at a time when energy markets and the security of suppliers is of great concern. They've just been announced as the company that will take over the customers of failed Avro Energy, and they've been rumoured to be interested in acquiring Bulb, one of the biggest sort of challenger energy companies out there, who have been said to be looking for additional funding in the wake of a very turbulent energy market. You'll know by now I'm a huge fan of Octopus. Even though this isn't strictly EV related, they do offer some of the best EV tariffs on the market, and I know a number of you use them, so I thought this was going to be of interest. Octopus Energy is exploring a move to take control of Bulb, its rival challenger brand, amid the crisis in Britain's residential energy market that has triggered a swathe of corporate casualties. Sky News has learned that Octopus Energy is among the parties which has requested access to a data room set up by Bulb's financial advisors in an attempt to secure new funding during the coming weeks. This weekend it was unclear whether their interest would extend to mounting a formal bid to acquire Bulb, which has almost 1.7 million customers, or whether it was merely exploiting an opportunity to learn more details of a competitor's financial position. Octopus is regarded as one of the sector's best run and most financially robust companies. If it did take over Bulb, Octopus Energy would become a serious rival in terms of UK residential customer numbers. Adding Bulb to its own customer base of more than 2 million households would create a giant supplier in just under 4 million British homes. That would mean that they were still the 6th largest player in the market, but would be a much closer challenger in size terms to the likes of OVO Energy and Scottish Power. Lazard, who is advising Bulb, is understood to be seeking expressions of interest from financial investors within weeks about injecting capital into the company. Nevertheless, industry sources said that formidable obstacles remained as to any attempt for Octopus to acquire Bulb, not least the requirement to fund working capital and sector-wide renewable schemes in addition to the current financial pressures affecting the market. Details of the possible structure or value of any transaction are not thought to have been worked on yet, while the names of any other prospective bidders or investors was unclear on Saturday. Despite media speculation, Bulb is not in the same imminent financial danger as many of the market's smaller players and has moved to reassure customers of its status in the past few days. There are now widespread expectations that the energy price cap, which will rise to £1,309 for prepayment customers at the start of October, will have to be hiked substantially again when it is reviewed next in the spring of 2022. Octopus Energy was founded a little more than 5 years ago by Greg Jackson, who found himself frustrated by the pricing tactics of existing large players. So it's interesting stuff here, isn't it? I mean, it's little more than media speculation at the moment, of course, but definitely one to keep an eye on. Octopus seem to be incredibly well backed, and of course they make their real money from selling their technology to other companies around the world. The energy supply business that we all know and love is more of a showcase of that technology than actually being their core source of income. That's all I've got time for this week. Do let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm sure some of you will be very keen to share your thoughts. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.